Hello, in this video let's talk about advice for parents of college-bound musicians. If your son or daughter is interested in majoring in music at the college level, let's talk about some things you need to know as a parent. And where a lot of this is coming from is many years of experience sitting in this room with parents having just heard their kid audition. And these are some of the things that many of them wish they had known. And I had no opportunity to tell them. I didn't know who they were until their son or daughter showed up to audition. And so often we have difficult conversations about things that would have changed the outcome for their son or daughter, that it would have made it go a lot better. So after lots of those conversations, I thought, I think I'm going to make this video. So the first thing I would say is your job as a parent is to make the investment. Now I know I raised 3 kids, and there were times when the checking account was not very impressive, and you know, my wife and I learned frugal habits for sure. We had to. But there are ways of being frugal that pay off well later, and there are ways of being frugal that end up biting you a little bit. So some areas in which you need to make the investment and spend some money are as follows. One is the instrument. Assuming that we're talking about someone who's not a vocalist, someone who's playing an instrument or a piano or something like that. Unless you live in an unusual situation where there is a freely available instrument easily available down the street or something, you will need to provide a good instrument for your kid. Now, we had a piano in the basement. It wasn't especially good, but fortunately my father was a minister of a church, and the church had been given a Steinway B, 7-foot grand piano, like this one. And I had the keys because I was the pastor's kid. So I had free access to this. I would just go late at night. I would spend about 4, 5, 6 hours late at night, every night. And I single-handedly wore the thing out, I think. But that's an unusual situation, as we can all agree. Most people are not going to have free, unlimited access to an excellent instrument. Most people are going to need to get their own and have it in the home. Now I tend to think about pianos first and foremost, so that includes tuning. You have to pay to tune and repair the piano and keep it in reasonable good condition. It directly affects what that student is able to learn and able to do if the piano is in poor condition. Broken hammers, malfunctioning dampers, it's out of tune, it's ugly, all of that kind of stuff. Also, on the instrument side, no keyboards. Now, I know the kind of world we live in, and I'm very technologically aware, and I'm all hip and cool with the times and all that stuff. But if you really want to be serious at the piano, you have to play the piano. You're not going to learn that from a digital keyboard, from a plastic instrument. Even the best, most expensive, weighted instrument does not have the same responsiveness. And it's no substitute. And you can immediately tell someone who's grown up just playing a digital keyboard in their bedroom versus someone who's been at a real piano. And there's a lot of making up of work to do. So I would say there's nothing wrong with playing a digital keyboard, but that can't be the main practice instrument because they're going to learn it wrong. Okay, they're going to learn all the wrong habits. You can send them to me to undo those bad habits, but now it's going to cost a lot. It's going to be really expensive. So why not just have them at a better piano and not form those poor habits to start with? In addition to an instrument, they need a place to practice. They need a practice space. Free of distractions, free of little brother and sister fighting and throwing things at them, of you coming through the room and interrupting them with a basket of laundry and making them stop while you go do a thing. They need uninterrupted place to work. Not with the dog barking, not with the baby crying. They need, and gets really important now, we need to talk about a teacher. I can't believe how many times in the last couple of years people have told me they want to major in music at the college level, and I say, who are you studying with? And they say, nobody. What? They're apparently trying to figure things out from YouTube and just noodling around on their own and getting no professional feedback. Okay, so here's how life works. The way humans learn is they try things in front of someone else who is experienced at that thing, and this other person gives them immediate, detailed, professional feedback. That's how you learn. That's the optimal way to learn. So if you're not with a teacher, you're not getting any kind of feedback. And so this is what I call the bedroom musician. It's a kid, and they've got an instrument of some kind, and they just play in the bedroom, and they watch things on the computer, maybe imitate some things, or they upload their own stuff. But there's no one who's a professional who's evaluating what they're doing face to face and correcting them. Okay? And so what it engenders is kind of artistic narcissism, where no one's ever told you that what you're doing is not great. And so it gets really hard even to accept criticism, and certainly it gets difficult to be aware of one's own shortcomings musically. So one needs to be with a teacher. It's very important to make the investment in lessons with a teacher. Now, finding a teacher can be so hard. I understand this. During COVID, teachers quit. They went online. All chaos broke out, and it was just a terrible time for private lessons. The recommendations that I make, one is that the teacher have a music degree, at least an undergraduate degree from an accredited school, like a real school, okay? And a track record of success. Who else has this teacher taught? To what level have they gotten? My preferred method would even be a teacher with a track record of getting people past college level auditions. Now, it is very, very hard to find, and a lot of people I know are doing teaching online. People like it, sort of, at least, because you can do it from anywhere and you can do it on your own schedule. I understand that. Online teaching, all other things being equal, is not as good as in-person teaching. You can't hear as well. Even with the best technology, the best low latency, upgraded version of Zoom or whatever, you can't hear the sound as well. I know, I've taught online a lot, and I always feel like I'm talking to this person through a cardboard tube that's about a meter long, and I can't really get as good a sense of the sound that's happening in the room. Nor can I read the person, their tension, how they feel as they're getting up and down the piano, potential physical problems. I just can't read it as well online. And so I think while online lessons are better than nothing, for sure, they're not as good as in-person lessons. In-person is preferable. Online only if absolutely necessary. If you are having trouble finding a teacher, get help. You may have a network of people that you go to for recommendations for the doctor and the dentist and whatever else. There may not be people within that network that know anything about music. You may have to look beyond that network to find a good teacher. So don't be afraid to reach out. For example, is there a university with a music program in your area? Could you reach out to a professor and ask for help? I've actually done this. I've found teachers for students on the other side of the country because they had no idea, the parents had no idea, parents weren't musical, And they said, what are we going to do? Well, I'll try to help them for sure. I want to see the kid succeed. So I've drawn on my network and contacted people and said, who do you know in Durnsville, Indiana, that could possibly teach. So don't be afraid to ask for help and recommendations. What to look out for, and I'm going to be really blunt about this, is the person who is your personal friend, a friend of your family, who plays a little bit at church, and within your small community seems like the only person who sort of knows a little bit about music. Those people are usually not qualified to do this job. Do they have a music degree from a real school, and do they have a track record of getting students to the level of passing a college level audition? And again, I've had this painful conversation so many times. Yeah, but Mrs. McGillicuddy is an old friend of the family, and she was the church organist, and we just didn't ever have the heart to not go to her and go to someone else. Yeah, but now your kid is going to pay the price for that. Your kid is going to pay the price because you didn't want to have an awkward conversation. Okay, a couple other things we need to think about. One is, we've been talking about making this investment, and that is very, very difficult, and the money is absolutely a concern. But let me point out something. Where I work, we award scholarships to students on the basis of the quality of their audition. And the difference between a very strong audition from a student who is well prepared and one who scrambles to shore barely alive like a shipwreck victim, the difference over 4 years is about $30,000 in what they pay. The student who is well prepared is going to have that much more scholarship money over 4 years from us. So you do the math. What does it cost for the teacher? What does it cost for the instrument? What does it cost to get the practice space ready? Because it could be tens of thousands of dollars of difference by the time you're done paying tuition when you look at that. Okay, next. Something to invest in, we're still talking about investing, is activities. Remember I talked about the bedroom musician, the student whose whole musical life takes place by means of their phone or their laptop. Get out of the house and get involved in things with other young people who are interested in music. For example, ensembles, contests. Is there a club or anything like that in your area where your son or daughter could be out of the house, hanging around, making friends with other kids who are really into music? That's where you learn. That's where you really, you find that friend who's at a similar level who sort of pushes you a little bit. My two nephews are both musicians, and one of them was telling me about a good buddy he had all through school. They're the same age, and they were always competing for the top place in the jazz band, in the orchestra, in all the activities. And they were great friends, and it was always a friendly competition. But man, it really sharpened those two guys to have each other, to push each other, okay? So that's where you find these people, is by joining a choir, joining an instrumental ensemble, a band or orchestra, a youth program. Furthermore, go to concerts of good music. You don't have to go every week. You don't have to have tickets to the New York Philharmonic and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. But on a regular basis, even if it's difficult in your area, find a way to go to a few professional level performances. Not your church Christmas cantata. That doesn't count. That's amateur hour, okay? I'm talking about good concerts, people with a name who flew in on an airplane and have posters with their picture on it, okay? Find out what top-level musicianship really sounds like, okay? That can be life-changing for a young person to hear that, okay? Invest in going to concerts from time to time. And along with all these activities, contests, clubs, and so on, opportunities to perform. frequently as possible. So here's what happens with college auditions, especially in piano. I ask them, what's the list of things you've played over the last 2 years? And they show me a list of about 4 pieces. I think 4 pieces in 2 years? You played 4 pieces of music? And I say, how long did you spend on these? Oh, about 6 months on each little thing. Okay. What did you do at the end of the 6 months? I played it one time for a little recital my teacher had. And then we had a brownie and some punch. Okay, that's not enough performing of music. 6 months waiting to learn a piece and then playing it one time is not enough. This morning I was reading a biography of Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, if you want to be depressed, compare yourself to Bach, of course. And no one is saying that that's a fair comparison. However, as a 22-year-old guy, he got his second kind of really professional job as a church musician, organist, director, and so on. So he was responsible for at least 6 church services a week, not including the extra funerals and weddings that he would get hired for. And for all of those, he was playing something, improvising something, usually something brand new, and composing something new probably every week. Okay? So in a month, already, that's 24 performances easily, maybe more. So you see the difference between playing once every 6 months and 6 times a week. Of course he got good. Of course he was excellent. All right? So perform, find a way to get in front of people and make music frequently. Okay. And then let me clear this off and we'll talk about one more thing. For parents, let's be realistic about 2 things: schools and career. First of all, schools. There are some schools that are going to be unrealistic for your son or daughter, and you need to educate yourself on the appropriate level, the appropriate target school that you should be considering. Don't be clueless, okay? Don't just say, well, we don't know anything about music, so we'll just wait and see what happens. Please don't be clueless. Please educate yourself. I've sat in here in this room many times with parents who are kind of shocked because they didn't know what our requirements were. They never asked. They never got in touch. Their kid didn't know. And now here we sit. The audition didn't go well, and there's not really a way forward. And I hate that part of my job. I treat them with compassion and give them the best advice I can, but it's kind of late to do anything at that point. So I invite you and encourage you to educate yourself about this stuff. First of all, schools have widely varying levels of quality and rigor in their music programs. And there are some schools who their admission standards are very, very low, or they don't have any. You can just sign up and go. That's okay. That can be a good opportunity. That school could be a good fit, but realize what low standards of entry means. It means they'll take anybody, and a lot of the work they're doing is somewhat remedial. Okay? On the other hand, on the other extreme, if you see something about a pre-screening video, that generally is a sign of a very elite school. You are not even going to be allowed on campus until you pass a screening audition, okay? Most schools are somewhere in the middle. They want you on campus and so on. So a couple of things to do. Find their audition requirements online and connect those audition requirements with the teacher. Have a meeting and say, hey teacher, here are these audition requirements. Do you understand these and what these mean? Have you done this with a student before? Have you brought anybody through requirements like this? Or are you staring at these wide-eyed because you yourself probably couldn't even play them? In which case, it's time to have that awkward conversation that you don't want to have. But if the teacher looks at it and says, aha, yeah, this Okay, I understand. This is reasonable. We can get your kid to this point. I will need a year, or I will need 8 months, or I will need whatever. And you will need this many hours a day, and so on. So that's a good answer from your teacher. So audition requirements and understanding that together with the teacher. Then there's the question of career. Now, again, sitting in this room, it is pretty astonishing to me the number of times a young person comes in here and says something really unrealistic. The most unrealistic thing goes kind of like this. One, that they play an audition that's maybe kind of problematic. The level of music is fairly early, and their own competence in playing it is not great. And I can see a lot of remedial work that I'm going to have to do with them. And then I say, what do you want to do with your life? Oh, I just want to be on stage as a performer. Okay, now we have to up the talk. The music profession is tough, and especially to be exclusively a performer is solely the domain of the most elite performers. Okay? Most people are going to combine teaching. If you're a pianist, accompanying. Yes, some performing for sure. And maybe some writing, maybe publishing some teaching materials. That's pretty cool. You can do that. Having an online component to your business, blah, 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 etc. You see, it's very multifaceted. Okay, it's entrepreneurial. Unless you're going to work directly for a religious institution, like to lead liturgical or worship services, or going into the public schools as a music educator. Most people are going to be some kind of entrepreneurial operator doing all these things. So when I hear somebody say, oh, I just want to perform, part of me totally forgives them because they're 18 and they don't know anything. And that's okay. You can be a dreamer. I love dreamers. But part of me cringes a little bit because hasn't anybody talked to you about the world? Are they telling you Disney stories about how you can be a princess? You know, what's going on? And now it's going to be my job to teach you this. So parents, if you can inject some realism in there, it's very, very helpful. Now, sometimes the kids won't listen to you. And then, yes, it's my job to set them straight. And I've had that conversation too. And we do. We have no problem setting them straight here. But if you can be realistic ahead of time about the kinds of careers that are available, that really, really helps. So there's much more that we could talk about. But these are some of the things that come up over and over and over again as I meet with parents when they come visit us for audition times. If you have a question, you can shoot me an email. I'll be glad to answer anything I can. And I'll see you later. Ciao.